Hi guys, welcome back to another episode, Complex Like Wine, the podcast where we talk about complicated things and improve over time, just like wine does. I'm up here in SLO, so I'm back up in wine country, and I'm here with Kolleen. So we met through the Women's Empowerment group that we are both a part of, and we're actually here at SLO Wine and Beer Co., which Colleen's a part of. And so I'm going to insert some video clips on the video portion of the podcast. But we were here last night for a kind of like a women's music event. The artists, are they called the Vixens or?
It's the Vixen Jukebox.
Yes, they were amazing.
They were amazing. And it's going to, I don't think it's always going to be the same four. So the creator, Cynthia Ford, she may be looping in like other female artists and stuff like that. But it's just a really wonderful way for us to support the female creatives in our community. And I thought it was amazing. They were amazing.
They did an amazing job.
They did.
Yeah, they were very good. And yeah, your shop is just such a cute little spot. I love the aesthetic, and it's so cool that you get to have these artists and females just kind of come in and just, again, empower each other.
Yes, it's a gift.
Yeah.
It is a gift for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay, so before we get started, we have a rosé, and so cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. That's very delicious.
That's good.
Do you know anything about the rosé off the top of your head?
I don't off the top of my
I had.
head. Yeah.
The people in the back that serve us
The
do.
people in the back know.
The people in
Our
the back.
sommeliers definitely know their wine.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's very yummy.
Yeah.
So when I came up here last, we had met for the first time, and I remember we were having a conversation because you were going through kind of a switch in your life, and you had made the comment of finding grace for your space, and that has just been sinking in with me since April.
I said that?
You said that?
That's good.
Yeah. When you said it, I was like, wow, that's really good.
And it's true. And I'm glad it landed for you. I'm glad that it resonated, and I'm glad you said it, because now I'm going to take it back in for myself again. But it's true. I mean, grace for the space that you're in, because we all go through so many seasons and transitions in our life. Some are really beautiful, and some are really brutal. So it's finding that grace for whatever it is we're going through in the most, sacred way that we possibly can. And I always tell people to give yourself grace. Give yourself a break, give yourself grace, whatever it is you're going through, because oftentimes we're so hard on ourselves. I've learned that. I always think the things we say to ourselves, this negative self-talk that just seems to kind of, I feel, naturally happen. It's not like we're making it happen, it just kind of does. And I always say, would I ever speak to my beloved children that way, to my best friend that way? And the answers are resounding no. I would never speak to someone else that way. So why would I ever talk to me? And I should be my own best friend, right?
Right.
Why?
Do you have any idea why we might do that? Because it's so true. I definitely have been very guilty of the ruminating thoughts, just a lot of lack of self-compassion and self-love, and always been the hardest on myself. But like you just said, when I think about it, would I ever tell my brother that? Would I ever tell my best friends that? Never.
Never.
So why do I treat myself the worst?
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any idea why we might?
Well, the brain, I know, does naturally lean towards the negative. So think about if you had somebody say 100 times to you, you did a great job, and you had one person say, you could have done better, or you didn't do a great job. What is the one thing you're going to focus on?
That one thing.
And it's the way the brain is wired. It's what happens. So it's like almost we have to rewire, and it's having that awareness of like, hey, wait a minute. Why am I latching on to the one thing versus the 100 positives I could choose, because it's a choice, to latch onto, right? And for me, I journal a lot. I write a lot. I went through weeks of where I would just get up and find a mantra, and I would just write it from the top of the page to the bottom, because there's power also in that of what are we telling ourselves? How can we rewire it? How can we train our brains to take in information in a different way? And to me, it comes down to choice. Every single day we wake up, we get to choose, where am I going to place my energy? Who am I going to give my energy to? And that's our power, right? And we forget.
That was very beautifully said.
Thank you.
Because you're very spiritual. You just exude a lot of energy. You're just like, I can tell, very intuitive and very aware. How did that start? Or when, what was there a moment when you were younger?
What a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful question. I'm an empath, and it started, from the time I was a very little girl. I could pick up on energy. I could feel other people. I would pay attention to things that maybe those around me weren't, or if they were, they weren't speaking of it. And I've just been blessed. For me, you talked about spirituality. Faith is my cornerstone. And there is something very deep in me that was planted from the time I was a child that is my core, and it is what I stand upon through every situation and everything. And for me, and I'm just going to use the word God, of course people or the one with no name. Let's try that. Because I know some people get triggered with the word God, and I have complete compassion around that. So for me, it was just always having that connection, really to the God inside of me, which is our intuition. And it's that internal wisdom, it's that divinity inside, which every single one of us have. I want to really emphasize that, because there's no one that doesn't have that. It's whether or not you tap into it. It's whether or not you cultivate that relationship and you strengthen that muscle, that spiritual muscle you have inside of you, which again comes down to choice, right? So, I think I've always been this way.
That's awesome. I think probably since when COVID started, because I had a lot more time on my hands, of course, I became more intentional with that side of me and just getting in touch. And I like that you said everyone has access to that. It's just whether you choose to tap into it.
What did it feel like for you?
Oh, man. There's just a peace beyond understanding. There's just, you're kind of wrapped in a cloud of comfort. Yeah. There's just, I don't know, you're very grounded. That's how I felt.
Oh, thank you.
And when there's situations where I could easily be flustered or getting caught up, upset, I've always noticed there's just been something where it kind of helps ground me. Granted, I have my moments where I am not grounded.
Me too. I had a ground the second I got here today.
Yeah.
So we have those tools, right?
Yes.
Thank goodness for those tools, and keep filling your toolbox, because sometimes one tool may not work in that moment. So you got to have a few more to, to be able to grab.
What are your tools that you could share?
So many. So that, when I got here today, for instance, I had my Palo Santo with me, which is holy wood. It's, it's a beautiful property to use for cleansing your energy, cleansing the space. So I cleansed our space here. I cleansed myself just because
cleansed me.
Yes, just because I'm dealing with life, right? So that is always a tool. And what's interesting is our sense of smell. The minute I smell that, it's how the body knows and recognizes, okay, it's time to just calm. That, I teach yoga. So yoga is my go-to. Even if I just get on my mat and go into child's pose. So for me, child's pose is the most grounding pose, because you're literally forehead to earth, belly, heart to earth, and you're internal, right? You're kind of closed off. So that breath work, journaling, like I mentioned, is a beautiful practice to empty, especially if you're really tend to be a person that's up in your head a lot, which a lot of us are. to just drop in and get it out. Get it out of your, from mind, body to paper, right? So one of the things I've been doing, I did it years ago, and I just started doing it the last 2 weeks, which I was talking to Tyler about this. Like, I've been in a depression, so I've really had to say, okay, nobody's coming to save me. Mm-hmm. I've got to get myself out of this hole that I'm in. And I started this practice of morning pages, which was something I did probably 10 years ago. And so you get up in the morning and try to do this first thing where you're kind of still in that not fully awake state. And you grab a notebook and a pen and you write 3 full pages of just a brain dump, literally pen to paper. And it may start out with, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And eventually it's a really, really incredible tool. And then to sit back and read it. And what I've been doing is I've been videoing myself reading it out loud.
Oh, okay.
Because I feel there's power in sound and in our voice. And really actually then that's another way that we're getting it out. Mm-hmm. So that's a really cool practice that I have found has always been helpful. And for whatever reason, I got away from it for many, many, many years. And then I thought to myself the other day, what really helped me? And that was one of the really, I don't know what it is about that practice. I think doing it first thing in the morning, kind of clearing yourself.
Right.
And I've noticed the days I haven't done it, which there's been a couple just because things have happened, it's been a different kind of day. Mm-hmm. So
it makes sense because there's something about, okay, whatever, the part of like choosing, all right, we're going to choose to be intentional about the day. Whatever needs to come out, we're putting it on paper. That way you're not carrying it throughout the rest of your day. It's really powerful. And I like that you also mentioned about recording yourself reading it because the power of voice. Recently going through a hard time, I recorded myself either trying to have discussions, processing what was going on, or when I was having a meltdown and crying. Mm-hmm. And because I had read somewhere that someone had tried and they felt way better. So I was like, I'll try it.
Right.
And I would watch those videos back, and there was something very powerful of just you're hearing and seeing the raw emotions that needs to come out. It was kind of surreal to see what it's like from an outside perspective, especially when you're all up in it.
Yes. And did you find it helpful?
Oh, tremendously. I think I was able to process what I needed to process much faster. Mm-hmm. And I think I was able to really just sit with my emotions and embrace it and feel it versus needing to push it down. Away.
Which is what so many of us do, and that you already know to do that. That's such a power in and of itself, because for me, for the longest time, I didn't want to feel like the pain and the grief and those things, and I would do everything to not feel that, which I learned is actually dangerous because it can manifest into physical ailment. I mean, there's all these things that can happen, right? If we don't honor what we're feeling. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit in sadness for, X amount of time, but what it is honoring that feeling. It's like, okay, I feel sad. And a lot of times hands on heart, I feel sad. What is this about? What does sadness want me to know today? What's the message there? Instead of trying to pretend it's not there at all and repress it and not sit in acceptance of it, right?
And that kind of ties into the whole thing of grace for your space. Whatever that may look like, just give yourself grace to have that moment, that period.
And the more you practice that and the more you live in that, you will walk that. Do you know what I mean? You will just start to embody that, and it will just become who you are. And I feel like I'm getting there. I'm 51. These last, I was talking to your dad about this.
Yeah.
These last 10 years have been coming into a lot of growth, a lot of change for where I am as a woman, as a mother. I'm a grandmother. And just coming into a deeper sense of acceptance of me and where I'm at, and so much about giving myself grace. and to not should all over myself, because we just do it, especially as women. I'm going to speak to the women here.
Yes.
Of, I should do this, I should do that, I should do the laundry, I should cook, I should, all these things that can just start to weigh on us. And then there's that negativity, and then we shame ourselves, and we go on the shame. I always say I'm on the shame train. Well, what is that doing for me?
Right.
Instead of just turning it around of, maybe it's something you need to do. So it's like, I get to do the laundry today. I mean, it's just a reframe, right? I had a therapist tell me once, I've been in and out of therapy for 25 years plus, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you. I went in to see her, and we start talking about something, and I was just like, oh, I thought I already dealt with this. Like, why is this coming back? Why am I having to go through this again? Just that frustration, right? Of like, did I not do the work and resolve this? And she just looked at me, and I said, why do I have to do this? And and she just looked at me, and she said, Kolleen, you get to do the work. You get to do it. So change it to that. And I get to do it for me, first and foremost, and I get to do it for my children, future generation. I get to do it for our ancestors, to heal wounding in our past generations. So instead of looking, it was just that one word changed, right?
Right.
I have to do it, or I get to do it. And it was a very kind of that aha lightning bolt came down of like, oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah. I got chills when you said that, because that's very powerful.
It was so powerful. I've had a couple of those moments in therapy that I just was like, whoo. Can I share another one?
Please. No, please.
Because these are things that helped me immensely. So this is a different therapist I was at. I just moved to Bakersfield. My husband and I were blending our families. We had gone through a lot of grief and loss, and just a lot. There was so much happening. And I grew up in a family, and if any of them listen to this, sorry you guys, but it's true, where we would, say something to this. I can't believe she did that. I can't believe he would say something like that. I can't believe, along those lines. And I was saying this to my therapist, and she just looked at me, again, kind of one of those like, stop. And she said to me, Kolleen, they are not you. You wouldn't say that. You wouldn't do that. But they did. And that's them. So quit putting your expectations onto other people. Because what it does, it creates suffering. And we're doing it to ourselves. So we're creating our own suffering when we do that. And that was another moment, and I changed everything. I don't do that anymore. If I do, I catch myself like that, because the only way we can change and shift is awareness, right? So I'm so hyper aware of when I start to do that, of like, no, that's not fair. Maybe I wouldn't do it, but they would, and that's okay, because that's them, right? It's a good one, isn't it?
You're bringing up all these points, and these are things I recently had epiphanies of, so there's just a lot of resonating. I think part of my suffering when it came to either relationships or friendships is you have the expectation of, well, how could they do that? Because I would never do that. And having to realize, yeah, they're a whole different person with a whole different mindset and the way they go about things. And
also a whole different way of how they were raised and traumas that they may have experienced.
Right.
Like, we do not ever know unless we are totally walking in someone else's shoes, second by second, what someone else has gone through, dealt with, overcome. So again, grace. Right? I feel like that's our theme.
That's our theme for this
without us even knowing that
yeah.
was, what it is. But because that's true, we don't know. They're reacting from what they know.
We're a product of our environment.
100%.
Right. What have been some other things that you've maybe had epiphanies or stuff within maybe the past 10 years or within very recently?
Oh, so recent. I had, trying trying to think where I read it. It was about reacting versus responding. And I came up with this the other night. I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, there's a reason they say first responders, not first reactors. Because think how different it is when we react versus respond. I mean, I can only speak for me. So reaction is going to be knee-jerk. It's probably going to be from a really high emotional state.
Right.
Typically isn't always a good thing, and it's not always healthy because you're not, instead of like saying, I'm going to take a breath, or my mama always told me, count to 10, and then respond. And if you can't get to that place, say, I need a break. I'm gonna walk away from this situation. I'm not going to leave it. I'm not going to abandon the situation and not deal with it, but I need more space than, So that's a huge one too. Like, do you want to react or do you want to respond? Choice.
Right. It's only my dad, brother, and I. My mom's not in the picture. And so the household we grew up with was, for her, she was a very reactive person. Okay. So it kind of was just always tense. And my dad is very patient, so I got both extremes of seeing that. So I think, in a way, it helped me. Well, I'm very self-aware, but that was a big thing because I got to see both ends of what it's like, and growing up knowing, okay, what is productive and what isn't.
Right.
And God, you just said a point that I was like, oh God, that hits home so much. But the whole thing of taking a moment you're allowed to, like, okay, I need a breather. Yeah. That's the point. You said, but I'm not abandoning. And I think that's always been a trigger or trauma of mine, fear of abandonment. Yes. And so knowing it's okay, you're allowed to take a moment for breath, but that reassurance of like, but we're not leaving this, like we're returning, but it's okay to have a moment to.
Yeah, to go for a walk or step outside, and even voicing that. For some, I have abandonment stuff too. So for someone to say, I'm not abandoning this situation. We will discuss it. We will come back to it, but it needs space. It needs breath right now, right? And I mean, the power of our words, choice. I feel like we're saying a lot of the same. Like, I feel like it's so interesting. We're having a very organic conversation.
Right.
Like, we didn't plan what we were going to talk about. We just trusted what would unfold. And I'm just finding it fascinating, just grace, choice, right? And really, a big word I love is honor. To honor ourselves. I just feel it's such a beautiful, there's something about that word. Like, how can I honor myself and the people I love better,
So for especially the women out there, because we're part of a women's empowerment group, how would that look like? What are ways that women can honor themselves? Because I know society has it where we're kind of been trained to be put second and to honor everybody else, which means sacrificing ourselves. Yes. So how can we be more intentional or protective of that?
Okay, I have a couple of things, something that just came through. And I'll get to that, but this is what I feel I need to speak to. When we're in situations that we may be sacrificing, you said that word, and we're fearful we might hurt somebody else. And I don't mean this in a malicious way at all, but just like, but if you make that, you're either going to hurt yourself or hurt someone else. So, choice again. Like, if you're in a situation or a relationship that isn't healthy for you, and I've had this happen with my daughters, but I don't want to hurt the person, Mom. I'm like, but you're hurting you.
Yeah.
You're hurting you by staying in a situation that's not healthy. So that's the way we honor ourselves, right? Is really honoring our soul and what our truth is. I mean, the deepest part of who we are. So in yoga, the cave of the heart. So you go to this innermost, and I do a visualization when I teach sometimes. You go to the innermost cave of your heart, and it's called Hridaya in Sanskrit. Isn't that beautiful?
That's beautiful.
And so always touching in to that innermost sacred, precious part of you and honoring that voice, number one. Because that voice is not going to lie to you. It's going to always tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. So that's number one. Because if you're not in tune to that, it's going to be really hard to honor what you need to honor in your life and your choices and what's happening. So I don't know if I really answered your question because it's such a personal thing, but if you're not in touch with that, I feel it's going to be difficult for you to give yourself grace and to honor yourself where you need to honor yourself. And that is giving yourself space, taking care of you, filling your cup. I can say as a mother and a grandmother, a wife, business owner, that we cannot, and I know you know this, and many of us know this already, how are you ever going to serve from an empty cup?
Yes.
It's not possible. So you got to find ways to care for you and not feel guilty about it. That's the other thing as women. We feel guilt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God forbid we take care of ourselves.
Right.
And
right.
It's like, I know I learned I'm always better when I do take care of myself. I'm a better mom. I'm a better friend. I'm a better wife. You know, I have more patience. I have more tolerance. My son has autism, so I really have to fill my cup because that's a really difficult challenge sometimes of what he goes through and deals with. And if I'm not filling my cup, I will lash out at him, and that's the last thing I want to do because that just exacerbates what's happening for him typically. So he's been an incredible teacher for me. Patience, taking care of self so you can serve from a really beautiful place.
It's always been interesting hearing from friends of or even peers, even mentors of taking care of yourself, but then you hear on the other end of don't be selfish. And so someone my age, especially during college, I think, where I'm a very giving person. And so I feel that guilt so quick and so easily of wanting to put other people first. But then your cup is empty. You get burnt out emotionally, physically, like everything. And having to realize, well, I'm no good to anybody if I'm no good to myself. And so having to kind of take the initiative of I'm allowed to put myself first because it's your life, your body, and no one else is in it with you.
Right. And if you aren't doing that, that's where resentment comes in too.
Right.
And then that can really affect your relationships, right?
Right.
So, and that's taking ownership because resentment typically builds from us maybe not caring for ourselves in the way we should. And then we resent the person. Oh, I sacrifice for you. I do this or do that. And none of that's healthy. So it's, exercising our muscle of awareness and our muscle of choice. And I just think that's the beauty of being human beings is we get to choose every day when we wake up. There was something else that came through. I was watching, this was a long time ago, but I've shared with you two of my big ahas. This is a third one that was so powerful and really changed me. And I typically share it like at retreats and stuff like that because the power of it. I was watching an Oprah, oh my gosh, probably 15, 20 years ago. And it was the one where she had on all men that had been sexually abused. And the audience in itself was powerful to look at because it's a sea of men that every one of them had survived sexual abuse. And one gentleman stood up. I believe he was an ex or an NFL, like a football player, obviously retired at this point, and he had been abused as a young boy for many years, I think 9 to 12 or something like that. And he stood up and shared his story, and he said, I will never let this person win. So what he does every day before he puts his feet on the ground and gets out of bed, he wakes up and he says to himself, how free do I want to be today? Choice.
Right.
Do I give energy to that? Do I, and of course, you could tell he had done a lot of work where he was dealing with the situation. I mean, he had to get to that point to say, how free do I want to be today? He's done his work around it. And I just thought that was so powerful. And it's a question we can ask ourselves every single day, more than once. But I think that's a really beautiful way to start your morning, to set that precedence and to set that tone of, okay, how free do I want to be today?
Right.
And then that awareness is already turned on of like, I'm not going to let this affect me or that. I'm not going to give energy to this situation. I'm not going to go, gossip or, dive into drama with people. You know what I mean? It's just like, I think as I've gotten older, and I love and I appreciate you saying I feel grounded to you, because I've never felt grounded most of my life. But I feel like when you do get to that place, and if it happens at a younger age, oh my gosh, like that's my prayer for my girls. Like learn this now. Don't wait till you're in your 40s and 50s like me. Like I'm grateful I've learned it. But that you do get to choose, and you do have that power. And it is up to you, and you do get to fill your cup without guilt. And you do get to be free, and you don't have to do this, and you don't have to stay in this relationship. And when you get to that place and get to know yourself, I think that's the groundedness maybe you feel from me, of like, I am grounded in who I am.
Right.
Always growing, always changing and evolving, like I was saying to your dad. Till my last breath, I get to work on myself, right? So that's my sense of maybe what you feel when you're around me, of just when you're in your truth, and when you're connected to that deepest part of you.
Yeah.
That's being grounded to me. And that no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And that's my faith.
I love that. Was so beautiful.
Thank you.
That was really beautiful.
I haven't talked this much in I don't know how long.
I know. It is kind of weird sometimes where you get an hour, you get a period of space to just talk.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
It's different.
I like it. I mean, it's, it's fun.
So last point you were talking about changing and constantly evolving and embracing and how that might look, or are there moments of that where you can feel uncomfortable because of unknowns and all that?
Yes. And I'm there. I'm in that. I'm in a transitional phase of my life. I'm in the pause, I call it, whether it's perimenopause or menopause at my age. So there's so many shifts happening physically, mentally, emotionally. And I've been speaking more about it because it's important for all. We're all going to go through it as women. And so I've started, that was another way of digging myself out of this hole of, I said, I'm just going to talk about it. I'm going to give voice to it. If one person listens, then it's meant for that person. If no one does, it's helping me out of my hole, and it's helping me take care of me and save myself, right? Because I realize nobody's going to come. And you can have support, and I'm grateful for that. But really, you get to do the work of pulling yourself up and out of whatever's happening. So being in that transitional phase is uncomfortable. Watching how much my physical body has changed, weight gain, and the things that happen. And so recently, I realized I was resisting. I was resisting, which was deeper in the hole, deeper in the hole, deeper in the hole. And when I realized that, had that awareness, I was like, wait, I need to be in acceptance of this. I am aging. That's aging.
Life.
Yes. So I have to be in acceptance of that. I am where I'm at. I'm in the pause. I have to accept that. Nothing I can do. I'm not saying, you don't have to accept the things you cannot change, but accept the things, did that make sense? Yeah. Accept the things you cannot change, right? Right. It's part of the serenity prayer. So when I finally came to that has helped me start to okay, I'm coming out of this hole. Mm-hmm. I've let myself go way down into. So
can you bring up more the pause? Because for me, I only grew up with my dad.
Sure.
I haven't been taught this. You're not taught about it in school. And so being with women that are in it or past it, they've mentioned it briefly. And to me, it's like a different language because I have no idea how that is.
And it needs to be talked about.
Right.
Because every one of us will go through it. And it's like our fingerprint. It's unique to each one of us, and what, hit family history, all the things, just who we are. I'm going to speak to I don't want to say negative. I don't like to use that word. The not so, the things that might be challenging that happen. I mean, weight gain is typically one of them. A lot of times women complain about getting the menopausal belly, which happens, or it's happened to me. Hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog. Emotionally, things happen. I mean, I've lived with anxiety and depression for as long as I can remember. But a lot of the women I've been talking to, anxiety started to present for them more in the pause. That's been a really huge thing for many women that I've talked to. Yet, so those are the challenges, right? The gifts. So I'm not going to end on that. The gifts are wisdom. Coming into this, this transitional phase of, I call it our crone years, where we're now in this next phase and chapter of our lives. And it's beautiful. And accepting, also, you don't care what people think.
I love that.
I'll say that again because I kind of, you don't care as much what people think. I'm not saying it completely goes away. And of course, like I said, it's your fingerprint, it's different for everybody. But I can say for me, I just don't really care what people think anymore. I know who I am. I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm okay with that. It's fine, So that's, I think that's a big one.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
You're just authentically yourself.
Yes.
And if people vibe with it, cool. If not, it's okay.
It's all right. Yeah. We all know we're not for everybody, and to come into a place of acceptance with that also just opens up room for those that do.
I was going to say, it naturally weeds out those that aren't meant to be in your
Yes.
circle and brings in the ones that are supposed to.
It creates the space.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. That was really good. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I feel really honored. I was saying to your dad, sometimes as we get older, and this is me, you feel like nobody really wants to listen to you anymore. Like, oh, she's old, whatever. Or, how society is. Like, they try to, say, once women are a certain age, well, we're not valuable anymore. Well, I'm here to say that's a bunch of bull, because we're always valuable, no matter what age, no matter what size, none of it matters, right? We are we come into this world of worth and of value, period.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. No, that was such a strong note. God, cheers.
Cheers.
That was really good.
Thank you.
Is there any last tidbits of wisdom you would love to share, or anything about Slow Wine and Beer Co. that you want to talk about?
Just, for anyone local, come support us. I mean, we're family owned, and we have an incredible selection of wine, from local wines to international, all over, and a great selection of beer. I'm not really a beer drinker, but I've been told we have a great selection of beer. And we also have an incredible food truck and an incredible chef. I feel really fortunate. I get to book all of our music, and I'm a huge music junkie. Like, music is my therapy, so that's been a really fun experience that I've had, getting to book the music. The last thing I really want to just express is you get to choose how free you want to be. You get to choose where you place your energy. You get to choose what thoughts you hook onto, and whether you go down the rabbit hole or not. And just to the best of your ability, tap into that deep, deep, deep part of you. Pradaya, sit in the cave of your heart. Spend time every day to sit in that cave. I don't care if it's 1 minute. It matters. That 1 minute matters to just tune in and touch in with what is happening inside of you, so you can honor yourself and give yourself that grace.
Thank you so much.
You're
that was
welcome.
Beautiful.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, guys, I will put all the information in the bio, especially if you're local to Slow. Please check this place out. It's great. And the music was amazing. So the music selection is top tier notch.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll put everything socials, that way you can follow in. And then we're part of the Women Making Waves group, which the next episode will be with the founder. And that way, for all the women out there, you want to find a strong community and network, you have all the resources to find that. So thank you for listening for this week, and we'll see you on the next one.